Hello and welcome back to Talk with Coach. I'm your host, Becca Goldsberry, Elite Sales and Leadership Coach with Southwestern Consulting. This podcast is all about learning from the best in the business, those who have walked the walk and are ready to share their journeys, their lessons, and hard-earned wisdom. We're about to discover some invaluable tips that can help you transform your business or leadership journey. So buckle up and get ready for another episode of Talk with Coach. You guys, I am so excited to introduce, and I get to call my guest a friend. This is Amy Farrow with Now CFO here in Indianapolis. And we had the pleasure of connecting through Queen City Women in Business at an event this fall. And you guys have all met my good friend, Jenny Agramonte. She'll be doing a podcast here in a few weeks, but Jenny is kind of the connector of all connectors. And so I was able to, isn't she Amy? I mean, she's
100%. She has been a godsend since I moved here.
absolutely. But I am excited and I can't wait for Amy to share her expertise with all you guys. Amy is a CPA and joined Now CFO in 2019 as a CFO consultant and serves as partner for the Indianapolis market. She has extensive experience across diverse industries, including hospitality, nonprofit, manufacturing, real estate, education, construction, and so many others. Amy, you're kind of like a coach. We're all dangerous in so many different industries. Like we're dangerous because we know a little bit of everything, right? But Amy has held key financial leadership roles such as CFO, controller, VP of finance. She excels in developing internal controls, budgeting, cash flow analysis, and guiding business through periods of transitional with practical results-driven solutions. Before joining Now CFO, she spent 13 years as a CFO in the private industry. She comes from Nashville, Tennessee, by way of earning a degree from Samford University in Birmingham, and worked at Arthur Andersen, a former Big Six public accounting firm. So in 2013, Amy and her family relocated up here to Indy, and it's just been a privilege getting to know Amy and just hanging out with you and helping each other grow business over the last few months. So Amy, welcome to Talk with Coach.
Thank you, Becca. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here, and I am so glad Jenny crossed our paths together because
I
you were one
know.
of those people. As soon as I met you, I immediately was like, oh, she's going to be a friend.
Yes. And there are a few women, and we've talked about this, where we're just like instant friends. And somehow he's great at connecting, all of us in that way. But you guys, one of the things that I love about Amy too is her ability to break down complex challenges, and her ability to turn failures into successes, and just the ability to speak positivity into others. So, and plus your laugh is contagious. So I'm excited for you to be on today. So walk through with me 2024. And I have had this conversation so many times this week. I've been calling past clients, current clients, on our coaching calls. And everybody keeps telling me 2024 has been a really non-traditional year for business, right? Like there's been challenges, there's been good things, there's been some not so great things. The market's different. I'm hearing a lot of this. Have you been hearing some of that with some of your clients as well?
Absolutely. Yes. I think for me, just on a personal level, 2024 has been unique because, as you mentioned, we just moved here to Indianapolis like 17 months ago now. So 2024 has been all about, meeting new people such as yourself, learning a new area. I've lived in Nashville my entire life prior to moving here. But from a client perspective, 100%, I think there's just a lot of unrest and unknown out there to clients. One thing I've really noticed, people have been a lot slower to pull the plug on new endeavors or even like working with new new, like even with us, people will be a lot more hesitant than they used to be. I think it was just a lot of unknown. I will say since the election's been over, I think the people knowing what direction that things were going, good or bad, in their opinion, I have seen a little bit of that that has been released. But yeah, I think 2024 has been a very unique year in that regard.
So, as you're working with your clients, and a lot of companies have been pulling back expenses, right? Like we're cutting, the travel, we're cutting training, we're cutting marketing, we're cutting all of these things. How are you preparing them for 2025? What are you hearing, whether it's in the news or in the market, about, where can we still, invest, right? Where can we still provide value for our team and our company to help them grow? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you recommending?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I am really telling people to rely on knowns sometimes more than being maybe out there just as adventurous. And now that also is coming from an accountant who we are not known for being the most adventurous group of people. But I actually do have an entrepreneurial spirit to me. But I just feel like this year it's really been getting people to rely on experience and data. I think also trusting your intuition when making decisions. There's a lot of things that are, with AI, that's a perfect example of, I'm sure you keep hearing a lot of people
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about that. So when I am talking to some of my clients, whether I'm talking to them about client acquisition or adopting new systems, prioritizing decisions, that, make sure you're aligning those with long-term business goals. And again, with AI, it's involved in everything now. And I hate to admit I am late to the party on this, but I am really trying to learn, because somebody said it really well the other day. They said people are worried. Okay, I'm especially in accounting, or maybe that's just because that's our perspective. If AI is going to take all of our jobs, and somebody said no, AI is going to take the jobs of people who are not getting on board. And I was like, oh wow, that's that they're probably not wrong. And so you just have to go with confidence, stay flexible, know when it's important to make decisions, and just remain open to new decisions and new ideas as they come along.
I love that. Great advice. Funny that you say that about AI, because just this week, I got a questionnaire through Northwestern Mutual, and their question was about AI. Would you want, AI to invest for you, or do you want that to be your advisor, right? So they were asking, what would you be comfortable with in having AI do? And I thought, hmm, it opens
Good
up,
question.
right? It opens up a big area of what is acceptable, what is not, what is comfortable, what is not. I was just talking with a colleague of mine, and we were talking about, there's something called Buzz AI. And so it works with LinkedIn for salespeople, and a lot of salespeople are having great success with it. And it's an AI tool trying to connect that salesperson with ideal type of clients. There's so many different ways that AI can be helpful, but then I'm sure there's so many different ways that we don't want AI to be near our business or personally at all, too.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like it is never, ever, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's ever going to take the place of relationships,
No.
insight, strategic thinking, and honestly, just your gut sometimes, like just going with your instinct. Like, I think it's going to be great from my perspective of looking at historical data and then saying, okay, this is probably how this is going to play out in the next 12 to, 16, 18 months based on historical data. What that does not know is, okay, we have added a new product line, or we have, there's one of our top salespeople is leaving. So things that aren't just, and
Right.
for somebody that loves data, I mean, I'm data driven, my whole job is, but I do not think it's going to take the place of relationships. So that's why it's just going to be so important who you're surrounding yourself with, who you're building relationships with. your networking partners. Like, this is a new role for me because like I've always been on the accounting side of actually doing things. So when I moved to Indianapolis, it's a completely new role. I'm still doing some, technical work, but I'm out there also now doing like, doing the business development and doing networking. And so AI can never take the place of that, so that's something that I think, yes, it can kind of seem scary, but there's still going to be a need for human interaction.
I would agree with you. And the funny part is, a lot of people, so when COVID hit, everybody got away from networking.
Yes.
Everything was Zoom, Teams. It's funny. We used to do Skype.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, Skype went away and Zoom and Teams just took over. How that happened, I'm not sure. If anybody knows how that all happened, you can make a comment below. But to me, that was always kind of interesting because Skype was the big thing in like the 2010 to like 2016, 17, right? So um it but I do think AI can be help us be more efficient.
Mm,
I
I
think
agree.
it can be an efficiency partnership there. For me, I love using ChatGPT because sometimes I'm reading something like, "Ah, I don't like how that says," and then I go to ChatGPT and it gives me a couple ways to relook, and it's like, oh, that's it, perfect, and I
Much better. Yes, me too.
make a couple tweaks, right? So like there's good things about AI and things that we can do. So going back to moving to Indianapolis, networking, building these relationships, being in this new role that you're in, because you are basically the face of Now CFO here in Indianapolis, because you're the one out and about. What are some things that you're seeing, that resonates with you as you're out and about talking? What's topic of conversations? What are you seeing like when it comes to networking? Because it's all changed.
Um, yeah, it has changed. And again, I don't have as quite like nearly as much of a background compared to like as you do, Becca, because again, this is fairly new for me.
Mhm.
So not only am I moving to a new city, my kids are grown, so you don't even have that aspect of like, oh, move to a new city and then let's become friends with, my friends, parents of my friends, kids. And so, or kids' friends. And so it's been really unique, but I will say making sure that I've learned to just be honest, not only with my clients, but my networking partners, not try to be all things to everybody. I learned a really hard, this isn't as much related to networking, but just like a really hard lesson I learned when I first moved here was, I'm excited, a new role. I've been with Now CFO, but not again in this role. And so my very first client, it was going great. I thought, I would have conversations with my consultant on my team. We'd reach out to the client. Great, great, great. So what I think happened, I could be wrong, but I think our client kind of ran into some financial difficulties. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, shoot, like we can't afford to pay for this work that we've had done. And so the part that I will own in this is that I was just taking the word of everybody that everything was going well. And I mean, of course, I am not a micromanager. I don't want to be. That is not who I am. But you also can't, this is a new role for everybody. And so
Right.
I think I just took everything at face value and it ended up like biting me in the butt. And also it was like a really big hurt to your ego when you're in a new role and you think you're killing it. And then like your first big client just goes, and I'm happy to say we did learn from that and have not had any more. We've had no more
Fabulous.
bad stories since then. So you got to learn from your mistakes. But and it wasn't that anybody was doing anything wrong or unethical or anything. I think it was just a lack of good communication, to be honest.
Okay.
And this particular engagement, our consultant was doing a lot of work, but not documenting very well. And so we had really no basis of anything when they came back and were like, what about this assist? Well, everything had been done via conversation or, on, talking to bankers or whatever. So anyway, all that to say, that was a lesson learned in making sure you're following up with your people, not just assuming that things are going as they are saying. You can do that without micromanaging. You can make sure that, because ultimately you're the one responsible as the leader of the team. And so I took full responsibility of that. I will say we lost the client, like I said, but I am proud of the fact that as a team, we hung together. I know my team member knew I had her back, because it's not like I had said, do this, 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 and she just didn't do it. Like I hadn't been a good leader in that respect. So that was a really hard lesson to learn, but something that we have grown from. And I will take having a good team that knows that I respect them, that we work well together. If I have to lose a client to learn that lesson, then so be it. But I am proud of the way our team has come together since then.
I love that. And let's face it, we've all lost clients. If there is a company that tells me, they've been in business for any length of time and they haven't lost a client, I don't know if they're telling completely the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've all lost clients, whether it's lack of communication or not delivering, not being upfront, right? Not setting proper expectations. We've all lost those clients because of those things. So I love that, because that is one of the biggest lessons learned, I think, for most leaders too.
Yeah, and I read a thing that said challenges are opportunities in disguise. So I really clung to that. I was like, because as long as you're learning from it, and we did, and so.
Absolutely. So, and I know you're managing, in a very competitive industry. What are some practical tips and strategies that you would recommend to someone trying to, grow their business this year, or ways to, because I don't know what 2025 is going to bring out. I think if anybody could tell us, they'd be, richer than Elon Musk and Bezos and stuff. But what are you sharing? What are some business growth secrets that you're kind of recommending to people for 2025 right now?
I would say, I hate to admit how long I've been in accounting, Becca. I've been in for 34 years. And so I have,
not true.
But I was obviously 10 when I started.
Yeah, I was going to say you had been 5. Yeah.
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 I know when I say that, I'm like, oh, good gracious, that's crazy. So in 34 years, I have seen, not only in accounting, but just in industries, a lot evolve. So I would say to make sure you're open to change, just like we're talking about with AI, and, continuing to learn. That's so important. Just to, I've seen a lot of people, they get into a job and they become stagnant. And even if you're in an industry, like I was the CFO prior to this, like you said, for 13 years, it would have been really easy to not just continue on my day to day. But I always made sure I stayed, learning, would go to continuing education classes. And then I would also say, treat every client interaction as an opportunity to build a relationship, not just close a deal. I think that's one thing I've done really well, I will say, is I have clients that I've worked on 5 years ago that I'm still getting Christmas cards from. Mm-hmm. So, it is business. And there's not every client likes that. Some people just want to be business, but I would say don't look at it as just transactional. Like, look at the long term. And, in a competitive market like we're in right now, you have really a unique approach, and we all do. Everybody has something unique and specialized that they're doing. So like me with fractional accounting, I know that's not as unique as it used to be, but it's still what we always, when we're talking to potential new clients or to networking partners, the things that separate us. Like when, for instance, our people are W-2 employees, a lot of our competitors are not. And so just some of the unique aspects that anybody has in their own industry. And then, adopting modern tools. And, and I will say at this stage of my career, my network, or anybody's network, is your biggest asset. And so that was probably one of the hardest things moving, because I left my biggest asset, besides my home. But from a work standpoint, I just walked away from that. And so, but I will say I love the new people I've met. I'm actually I'm very proud of myself for doing that. I've even had a few people say, you're brave, to do that at 57 years old, to take a plunge. So, just your assets are your assets, but you also can have create new assets. And, I would have not ever met any great people like you, for instance. And,
Right.
and other thing I would say is, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is just to communicate, be realistic, and always ask for feedback. Even if sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, but if you are asking for it and people give it to you, that's the way you're going to learn,
Absolutely. It is feedback is the only way you learn.
Yeah.
And
And it's not always fun, but it's necessary.
Absolutely. And sometimes feedback hurts and it bites, but you know what? You always grow stronger from it too.
Yeah.
I keep looking. I have a post-it note here on the bottom of my computer screen. It's one of my favorites from Zig Ziglar. And it kind of goes along with that because I think without feedback, it's hard to build your confidence, right? And so Zig always said, confidence is going after Moby Dick in a rowboat and taking the tartar sauce with you.
That's awesome.
I know. I love Zig's quotes. His is always great. That's one of my favorite ones because it's got a little humor. But I think you're right. And if you're not growing, learning, whether it's trainings, offering trainings for your companies, coaching, whatever maybe you're going to be stuck.
Yeah.
And you're not moving forward. It's like you're in quicksand,
Yeah, exactly. And circumstances change. Like the job I was in prior to this, I really thought that's where I would retire. And then our board ended up deciding that they wanted to sell to private equity. And so, so all of a sudden so you never know, even if it's something you think you're going to be in the rest of your life, if that's your mindset, and even if it ends up being where you stay the rest of your life, you still want to be learning and growing. I mean, you can take that into any job, even if it's a job you've been in 30 years. My worst thing that drives me crazy to go to a client is the answer of, well, that's just how we've always done it. And like, that's not, no, don't do that.
Friend, I have heard that so many times over the last 12 years as a coach and then they're stuck. Yes. Or they'll grow for a little bit and then they stay stuck, they stay complacent. They're not looking, retention decreases.
Yes, exactly.
All of those problems, right? So speaking of, where do you see your industry, the fractional CFOs, where do you see it going in the next 5-10 years? Like what is that? Because not every company can afford a CFO,
right?
Or even HR people. Like a lot of companies can't afford $100,000 HR person, right? So where do you kind of see Now CFO and moving towards the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I know a lot of this is going to sound self-serving, but it is true. And we've really been doing a lot of research on this because you're exactly right. And so we're being, trying to be on the cutting edge, if you will, I know I keep bringing up AI, but like we're really starting to bring in AI for some of the more routine tasks like bookkeeping, payroll, data entry, things like that. I do feel comfortable with AI. I'm still not, maybe I'm just behind the times. I still don't think it takes away from some of the higher level strategy work that we do. So that's one great thing with Now CFO is that we work with clients. We try to meet them where they are. We also have a remote team that we are working with now that are Now CFO employees that we can also get to do some of the more transactional, data entry type work to where we're saving some of our other team members to be in there helping with the strategy, the budgeting, because to your point, like not everybody can afford or do they really need, somebody full time. So most of our consultants, we have 2 or 3 clients. So you don't want to have somebody with 12 clients because then they're not giving great attention to anybody. Right. And we try to be very mindful of that, like making sure that our team members have enough time to devote to each one of their clients. So, and then one thing when we get in there with clients, we really try to help them to adapt with streamlining processes, putting even things out on, this might seem like such an obvious thing, but like even something like QuickBooks Online, like there's still people using QuickBooks Desktop, and they can't really integrate with their payroll. So they're like doing a manual entry and, there's just so many things that people maybe wouldn't, but I'm surprised they're still doing. So helping our clients just learn how to streamline things and, and making sure that our clients have real-time data, because
Okay.
if you have stale data that is not accurate, that is not helpful at all. And I'm always surprised at that too. Like if, let's say you've done something in March and an owner's not getting their financials until the end of April, that's not helpful at all. Like how can you, so making sure that businesses are expecting and have, real-time data. And another thing I've really been focusing on, this has been very recently, is how many clients we're getting now that have, they're either acquiring or building country or new offices across the world. So we're no longer talking about Indianapolis or Indiana or even the United States. Like it's all over. So making sure that we're staying up on, international tax laws and regulations, and hiring team members that understand that and have that experience. So that's something that's pretty new, I'd say in the last, like, not obviously last few years, but like the last 20, 25 years, really having to think about multi-currency, think like books from Japan are going to be done different here than the United States. So things like that. And just really being strategic with our advisory services and making sure that we're not just going through the motions. Like, okay, here's your, like providing value and saying, okay, here's the trend. Here's what we're seeing. Here's where you want to go. This is how we're going to get there. And meeting with your clients on at least a monthly basis to go over, because if you wait till the end of the year, in my opinion, to go over your financials for the year, and you messed up on something in February, well, you can't fix it at that time. But if you met with them at the beginning of March for February, yeah, you can go in and correct that. So just being more strategic with our clients.
Such good advice. And I'm thinking here too, like Indianapolis, a lot of people may or may not know, but there are so many international companies anymore based in Indiana.
Yeah.
And I guess I never realized until I was, looking for a few things, but one of Eli Lilly's big offices is in Dublin.
I didn't know that.
Okay. And it was one of the reasons why Indianapolis now has, it's 2 or 3 days a week. There is a direct flight from Indianapolis to Dublin.
Oh, I didn't know that either. I learned something new. Interesting.
Another podcaster shared that information with me a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, I guess I did not realize how much business between Dublin and Indianapolis there really is because of Eli Lilly now.
Interesting.
So, I know, right? And so you're right. Like, and I know as a company at Southwestern Consulting, we've got coaches, I think, in 18 different countries. So when you're selling coaching in 18 different countries, that's 18 different currencies, 18 different countries with with 1099s, like companies, you don't have time to be thinking about how to do taxes for all of that. That's why you guys are there, because who has time to be thinking about that?
And just being more aware of that. Like I've hired a few people on my team that, speak 2 or 3 different languages, and it's become invaluable.
I can imagine.
Because even though I feel like a lot of countries speak English, even if they do, I think people appreciate the effort of, speaking to them in their language. I mean, we should, like, that's their country. So in my opinion,
we can't make everybody speak English. I mean,
yes, even though some people would like to do that. I disagree with that.
I would too. It would be great if it was, everybody's second language, but you know what? I should probably be better in Spanish and German and, a few other things myself. So who am I to judge at that point? But anyways, so moving to Indianapolis, how has work-life balance, because you know me, I know Nashville very well. I'm there at least 2 to 4 times a year. How has moving from Nashville to Indy, what are you loving most about Indy? What do you miss about Nashville? What's work-life balance look like for you here in Indy now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love Indianapolis. I really do. I know I mentioned this to you, Becca, because a lot of people have said, why did you leave Nashville? Like everybody's moving to Nashville. And I was like,
crazy down there. Get away because the taxes, everything is going up. So move away.
It's crazy. But it's like, even just like going downtown, it's like, I'm like, where am I? Because I was just home back there last weekend for Thanksgiving. And But yeah, so I love Indianapolis. I feel like, and I mentioned this to you before, it reminds me of Nashville 20 years ago in a good way. I always want to say not behind the time. I don't mean that at all. I mean, like, you can actually go places and see friends and build a park. And there's a lot of great restaurants here. There's a lot of activity that goes on. So it's been, the hardest thing would be leaving family and friends because, lived
Right.
somewhere for 56 years. You kind of knew everybody and knew everything. I never had to use my GPS. Still have to use my GPS everywhere. So that's been different. But, again, I know I'm happy that we did it because we met new people. You realize even though Nashville and Indianapolis are not that different, to be honest, but just seeing different cultures and just the way different things do things differently. And, people always talk about Southern hospitality, which is a real thing, but so is Hoosier hospitality. I mean, I feel like here people have just really been over backwards to be helpful, even when it wasn't beneficial to them. They was just truly being kind people. So I do like that. There's been an adjustment because I'm in a whole new role, first of all. So that's been, even if I'd still been in Nashville, it'd have been an adjustment. So there's been a lot of changes, but I'm really happy that both of our children ended up here. My husband and I moved here with our 2 dogs, and then our daughter moved here with her 2 dogs and cat. Then our son just moved here with his 2 dogs. So now we have 4 adults and 6 dogs and a cat in our house for a period of time.
That's awesome.
But we love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm just happy that they're here. And so anyway, it's been a good transition. Glad to meet new people, and you still keep your old friends too. So you're just adding to your friends.
That's right. And we're not, Indy and Nashville is not that far apart. It's really, a 3.5 hour drive if you can time it just perfectly.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. You got to time it just perfect so you miss the Louisville madhouse, and then you nail Nashville just right. So
exactly.
It's really a 3.5 hour straight.
Yeah. It's not bad at all.
65, unless there's construction. So, I mean, but 65 has been under construction for 20 years now. So,
and I think they're putting a new, I read a direct flight for Southwest from Indy to Nashville starting in March.
They did. Yeah. They did. I was so excited.
Me too.
I was like, because before it would go from Indy to Baltimore and Baltimore back down to Nashville, and it was an 8-hour flight. And I'm like,
and you're like, that's
why? Dumb. That's just
that is dumb.
Silly.
It is.
Absolutely so. So no, I'm super excited that it is a quick flight down. I mean, if you had to, be there, because really with Indy Airport in Nashville too, they're not so big that you have to be there 3 hours in advance.
Right. Yeah.
And if you've got the TSA pre-check, you can get there in about an hour and 15 minutes and you're good.
Yeah. I like, the Indy Airport's been great.
I love it.
Me too. Me too.
So there was speculation, though, that I did hear that Indy was trying to bid for the Olympics at one point. I don't know if you ever heard about that.
Oh, wow. I did not.
And it was one of the reasons why they built the airport, the new airport, and why they're trying to work 465 and do those different things. But then like some of the swimming and, lake type stuff, you've got like Monroe Lake and stuff. So they're trying to build the Indy area supposedly because they would like to do an Olympic bid.
I did not know that. That would be fun.
So that's been rumored for about 10 years. So we'll see if that ever happens. And if it does, I told my husband everybody can Airbnb their houses and make their mortgage, for the next year at that point.
I know. I thought about that. I should have done that for the Taylor Swift concert.
Right? I mean, one of the amounts people were paying to stay in Airbnb here in town, that was.
I was like, I should have thought of that earlier. So yeah,
I heard somebody paid was $5,000 for like 2 or 3 nights, and
I heard
it was
that
just
too.
like a 2-bedroom house downtown, and I'm like, where did we all go wrong? Why were we not thinking? So
exactly,
I know we should have. So if somebody asked Amy, okay, Amy, boil it down. What are the top 3 pieces of advice you'd give anybody to looking to, one, either grow their business or their leadership skills, or just a different way to look at their business setup, structure, strategic planning?
Good question. I would say first and foremost, and we've talked about this a lot, but it's so true, building and nurturing relationships. Because businesses thrive when their leaders genuinely care about the people on their team and their customers. And we've all been on the receiving end of that, or somebody that was not that way. And I just think that that goes a long way with your team and your customers. I would also say to be adaptable and continuously learn, like we mentioned earlier. You know, you have to be willing to pivot when it's necessary to adopt new strategies, because, you know, if you don't, you're going to get left behind in the dust. It might be okay I think about Amazon all the time. I have a client that, it's just amazing. I mean, there's parts of it I'm thinking, anyway, it's like we've all gotten where we can't even live without Amazon, which is kind of sad sometimes. But,
know.
You know, his success was just based on continually adapting, technological advances. He paid attention to the consumer demands, you know, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he started out as just like a global e-commerce bookstore kind of, and now look at it now. So he was continuously learning. He wasn't just, and he might have been fine just being a bookstore, you know, e-commerce bookstore, but he just continued to adapt and continuously learn. So that's something that I think is super important. And then, you know, leading with purpose and clarity. I think, I know as being a leader and then also being, you know, a team member, I think if you're, you know, open and honest with your team to a point, I mean, not everybody needs to know everybody business of everything, but I've learned that if people understand why you're doing something, even if they don't necessarily agree with it, they're going to be a lot more apt to follow it if they can respect the process and understand at least the thought process. It's not just, because I've even done that with clients before. I've gone into things and thought, why are you doing that way? And I'll say it, not obviously like that, I'm thinking, but say it. And then a lot of times there's a really good reason. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that actually does make sense. So being able to listen, but when you're leading, listen to opposition potentially, but then even if there is opposition, being firm, but explaining why you're doing it.
Such great advice. Such great advice. All right. So I always ask everybody, and I don't think I even prepped you for this one, but I always ask everybody, is there a funny story that you can share with everybody about you while growing up? Is there something funny, a story that your mom just shared with everybody because this was just so funny?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, I was the perfect child, obviously, but
Absolutely. We all were,
one,
weren't we?
of course, one that my mom always laughed about. I was 3 years old, and we had a lady over there. She was kind of like a surrogate grandmother that was always at our house, and so my mom would put a thing of green beans on my plate. Mind you, 3 years old, and she said I wasn't eating it. And her name was Miss Roxy, was the surrogate grandmother. Miss Roxy looked at me. She's like, Amy, you need to be eating your green beans. If I were you, I would eat those green beans. And I looked at her and I said, no, if you were me, you'd be doing exactly what I'm doing. And they said she about fell out of her chair. So that
funny.
kind of gives you an insight of my personality.
Yes, it does. And I love that. Well, I appreciate you, and I'm so glad you moved to Indy so that way we could be best friends and great friends. Everybody, if this wraps up another episode of Talk with Coach, a huge thank you to Amy for sharing such valuable knowledge and lessons from her incredible journey. If today's episode resonated with you, or if you've got burning questions or a topic you'd like for us to discuss in the future, I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe, like to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Until next time, remember, every step forward is part of your success story. Keep striving for greatness, keep learning, and don't forget your journey is just beginning. Until next time, make it a blessed day, everybody.